Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. Fans of The Young and the Restless, get ready for an incredible turn that nobody anticipated. This dramatic film delves deeply into the most recent Genoa City action, including Victor Newman's startling retaliation against Kane Ashby and the emotional devastation caused by Amy's devastating blow that threatens to topple everything. The tide has finally shifted after weeks of backroom betrayals, lies, and secrets, and Victor is done being nice. The mustache begins his vicious retaliation against Kane with a cold, well-thought-out plan, revealing his ulterior intentions, severing his power moves, and striking him where it hurts most, his pride, his legacy, and his brittle connections. However, what motivated Victor to act in such a drastic manner? And what specifically did Kane do that permanently crossed the line? Amy, meantime, is distraught as the consequences of Kane's actions engulf her life like a tidal wave, trapped between truth and loyalty. Kane is left reeling when she makes a daring, agonizing choice that destroys her trust. Could this be the last nail in the coffin for their relationship? Or will Kane figure out how to control the damage and turn it back to his advantage? The main plot points, insider information, and fan theories surrounding this crucial matchup are all covered in this video. From Amy's heartbreaking betrayal to Victor's cold confrontation, we dissect each explosive event and its implications for the young and the restless future. Will Victor's retaliation lead to a larger conflict in Genoa City? Is this the start of Kane's final demise, or can he weather the storm he caused? Fans will be talking about the show long after it finishes because of the power maneuvers, intense emotion, and unexpected outcomes. This breakdown offers the whole emotional roller coaster, regardless of whether you're on Team Victor, Team Kane, or are just interested in the drama. According to The Young and the Restless spoilers for the week of July 28th to August 1st, Phyllis Summers begins another dangerous scheme, and Victor Newman will prepare retaliation against Kane Ashby. Let's discuss what will happen on YNR because Amy Lewis will also take a devastating hit. Carter will set up a hostage scenario in Nice that culminates in a dramatic altercation with Chance Chancellor. Carter will shoot himself one last time after Chance is shot and murdered. Lily Winters will apologize to Kane after she is released from Carter's control. Lily will regret accusing Kane of murder as she knows in her heart that he is incapable of doing it. The chaos on his summer estate has caused Kane to make a lot of new enemies, but he is determined to return to Genoa City and carry out his plans there. This contains Kane's attempts to mend the rift and win Lily back. Cell service will be activated in the interim, allowing all visitors to reconnect with their loved ones in Genoa City. Nate will break the news to Amy that her son won't be returning home after Lily provides him with updates on Damien Kane's terrible fate. All of Chance's loved ones will have to grieve a horrible loss as word gets out about his gory ending. Nick Newman will kiss Sharon Newman and complicate matters for them when they get home, even if he is hurt and might not be thinking straight. Will Nick regret stepping over that romantic line with Sharon once his wound has been healed and he is recovering? Regarding Adam and Victoria Newman, their bond as siblings will continue to improve. Since Victoria and Adam have recently made some progress toward reconciliation, they will choose to continue. Victor will be pleased to hear that as he concentrates on maintaining family harmony. It sounds like retaliation is imminent because Victor will also want to ensure that Kane learns a hard lesson. Reality will hit Kyle Abbott hard once he and Audra Charles figure out how to play with fire once more. Kyle will regret not being there for Claire Newman all this time after learning of Cole Howard's passing. As it happens, Kyle will also offer Diane Jenkins Abbott and Jack Abbott cause for concern. Diane and Jack usually do that since Kyle keeps getting into more problems. When Phyllis takes a chance on a fresh strategy, Daniel Romalotti Jr. will realize trouble is on the horizon. This might have to do with Phyllis's partnership with Billy Abbott and their eventual plan to use Kane to target Chancellor. Daniel will rescue Tessa Porter once more after raising the alarm. Daniel might help out when he sees Arya, Porter, Copeland and Tessa in the park, since she will be trying to amuse her by herself. According to spoilers for The Young and the Restless, the week of July 28 August will bring some unexpected events and deeper ties, so keep an eye out. Amy's devastating blow, Victor's retaliation against Cain, was the result of years of simmering tensions, betrayals, and unspoken grudges that had festered beneath the surface. Amy was a pawn in the deadly game of competition, jealousy, and power struggles between Victor and Cain until she made the decision to take charge of her own destiny. Cain, the bold and haughty force of nature, had always dominated every place he entered, while Victor, the underdog, was the silent thinker who waited. Cain had made equal parts enemies and allies with his charm and brutality, but Victor was different. He didn't crave the attention or the dread that Cain thrived on. Rather, Victor labored in the background, methodically organizing and awaiting the ideal opportunity. When that time arrived, the goal was not just to defeat Cain but also to dismantle him piece by piece until the man who had once believed he was untouchable was completely gone. Their disagreement had deep roots, entwined in a past from which neither party could escape nor desired to return. They were once allies, united by a common goal and set of interests, but even the strongest ties may be tainted by power. Cain's ambition had no bounds, and he had crossed boundaries Victor would never be able to forgive in his unrelenting quest for power. Although betrayal was unavoidable, Victor had not expected it to take such a cruel shape. With a sneer that tormented Victor's nightmares, Cain not only stabbed him in the back but also made sure Victor felt every second of it. The idea that Cain had viewed him as weak and disposable was more painful than the humiliation itself. Victor was going to make him regret that error. Amy, on the other hand, had spent too much time as a mute observer. She had seen how Cain ruined, intimidated, and controlled everyone who stood in his way, including the people she loved. She had initially trusted his assurances and his lofty declarations of strength and dedication, but time had exposed the decay underneath his facade. She had witnessed his treatment of Victor and his dismissal of him as only a stepping stone. Cain was blind to the fact that Amy had her own grievances, her own scars that had never completely healed. On the inside, a storm was building, but she had acted as the devoted follower, the one who remained in the background. Everything changed the day she made the decision to take action. Victor's retaliation started with patience rather than a big altercation. He was the only one who was aware of Cain's shortcomings, including his conceit, need for dominance, and inability to accept that anyone could outsmart him. Victor thus adopted a long-term strategy, sowing mistrust and gradually turning Cain's supporters against him. He employed knowledge as a weapon, revealing just enough to cause mayhem but never enough to expose his hand. Ever the narcissist, Cain believed the betrayals were arbitrary and the product of weaker men who were too cowardly to confront him. He had written Victor off as broken, but he never suspected him. His second error was that Amy played a vital part in Victor's scheme. Cain never perceived her as a danger, she was the wild card. As he had assumed her loyalty was unwavering, he had underestimated her, just as he had underestimated Victor. Amy, however, had her own grievance to resolve. Even Victor was shocked by the intensity of the final hit, which came from her hand rather than Victor's. It took place while Cain was at his strongest and thought he was unbeatable. A night to celebrate another triumph, another conquest, a meeting of their inner circle. Unaware that the ground underneath him was going to collapse, Cain stood in the middle of the room, enjoying the awe of everyone around him. Amy made a well-thought-out and accurate maneuver. Instead of screaming or becoming angry, she just came forward and told the facts in a steady voice. Not just any truth, but the one that could ruin him, the secret that Cain had buried deepest. As her words took hold and the air became heavy with incredulity, the room fell silent. Cain's normally calm face was contorted with panic and rage. He made an effort to laugh it off and call her a liar, but the harm had already been done. The mistrust was there, circulating among his supporters like poison. From the shadows, Victor observed Cain's kingdom disintegrating before his eyes, a sense of delight growing in his chest. A series of repercussions ensued, each more disastrous than the one before it. Kane's reputation was instantly destroyed when his supporters turned against him. The people he had subjugated were now furious with the guy who had once inspired dread. Victor might have stopped there, knowing he had won, but revenge was never about winning, it was always about making sure Kane felt every bit of the suffering he had caused. Victor struck the last blow with a single remark that went deeper than any blade, given without the use of force but with words, "You were never the king. The only idiot who believed he could play the game was you." Kane's demise came quickly and completely. The bitter taste of loss was all that remained after he lost his dignity, power, and influence. Amy, on the other hand, left without turning around, her personal troubles now resolved. Although Victor's retaliation was thorough, it had a stale aftertaste. The sacrifice had been steep, but the victory was sweet. He questioned whether either justice or vengeance had really prevailed in the end because the distinction between the two had become hazy. Only ruins remained after they had all been consumed by the cycle of retribution. As the dust settled, one fact remained: there are only survivors in the game of power, not winners. The long term was always Victor Newman's strategy. His reputation was not only respected in Genoa City, but it also inspired fear, and anybody who ventured to cross him were rarely spared. It was going to be a harsh lesson for Kane Ashby. The idea that Kane had been involved in something much more sinister and pernicious than anyone had anticipated began as a murmur, a low-key rumor that crept through the corridors of Newman Enterprises. For years, Victor had put up with Kane's conceit, his boldness in thinking he could be in the same ring as him, and his attempt to meddle with Newman's business dealings and, worse, his family's delicate but well-guarded emotional foundation. Kane's secret relationship with Amy, Victor's calm, intelligent assistant who had served as his eyes and ears for almost 10 years, was what had ultimately turned the tide. Until Kane came along, Amy had always been passionately loyal. The initial flirtation had turned into manipulation, which was more dangerous. Kane viewed Amy not as a lady but as a way to obtain private information Victor had secured more tightly than Fort Knox, including backdoor transactions and Newman files. Amy didn't intend to turn on Victor. She had gone for Kane because of his charm, his accent, and his sensitive eyes, which conveyed tales of a troubled past and a yearning for atonement. But it was all premeditated. Every word and every touch that Kane made had been a part of a much darker plan. Victor was aware. He was always aware. He watched, however, as Amy faltered and Kane maneuvered, like a predator pursuing its prey. He initially assumed Amy was innocent. She started to cover for Kane, sneaking into encrypted folders she had no business accessing and whispering secrets in Kane's ear late at night when she believed no one was listening. He saw her loyalty change. Victor's eyes were everywhere. When he finally made up his mind to attack, he did it with the accuracy of a professional assassin. Kane had just obtained what he thought was the smoking gun, a secret merger paperwork that might devalue Newman's stock and embarrass Victor in public if it were to be exposed. He was cocky about his achievement and ecstatic about power. However, he was anticipating private information when he accessed the file on a private server, but instead he found a single statement that made him shudder. "I see you, Kane. The game is over." After a few seconds, his phone went dark, his laptop closed itself, and the door of the hotel room opened to reveal two silent security officers from Newman who graciously requested him to accompany them. Kane had stepped straight into the trap, which had been laid a long time before. The true victim was Amy. She had thought she was adored by Kane. She had begun to envision a future with him, possibly a fresh start away from the cunning realm of family power intrigues and corporate espionage. But when Victor called her to his office, she could see the disappointment and calm-masked rage in his eyes, which were more painful than any scream. Victor didn't speak louder. All he did was play the security video. Her tone. Her face. In what she believed to be private times, she whispered to Kane. She broke down in tears, pleading with him to forgive her and understand. Victor, however, was not feeling very forgiving. Quietly, he continued, "I trusted you, Amy. You were like family. And you gave the keys to my kingdom to a viper." He didn't fire her because that would have been too forgiving. He moved her to a ghost division of the corporation instead. No workplace. No title. No entry. She would spend the rest of her life strolling around Newman Towers, serving as a constant reminder to everyone of what happens when allegiance falters. Amy suffered a devastating blow when she lost Victor's trust rather than her career. It was the realization that Kane had never loved her, that she had ruined her own future, and that she had been a piece in a game. Victor's retaliation wasn't quick for Kane, rather, it was oppressive. He was excluded from all significant business circles. His partnerships failed because of his quiet phone calls. Accounts were closed by banks. Overnight, the allies disappeared. Even his attempt to make amends with Lily was unsuccessful. She had heard the stories, but she didn't think the guy she had loved was really gone until Victor personally sent her the transcript of Kane's final discussion with Amy. It was icy, cunning, and vicious. Kane had remarked, "She fulfilled her purpose. She believes this to be love." That statement shocked Lily in a way she hadn't anticipated. "She's a useful idiot." She had stood up for him. Thought he was a better person. However, as she saw Kane go crazy and his despair develop into psychosis, she realized that Victor had not destroyed an innocent man, rather, he had exposed the truth. Kane wasn't a casualty. He was actually a villain. Despite the pain, she was thankful that Victor had shown her Kane's true self. However, Victor's retaliation went beyond just going bankrupt. He desired Kane's emotional suffering. He then made contact with Juliet's parents. Kane had always pretended that his wounds from the custody battle over Sam and his unresolved past with Juliet's murder had healed. Victor was wiser. Not because he cared about Sam, but because he knew it would upset Kane, he offered Juliet's parents the financial and legal support to reopen the custody dispute. It was successful. The day Kane lost his last investor, he was served with documents. Kane, who was alone, destitute, and struggling to keep his son, finally met Amy, the one person he had yet to face. He discovered her standing next to the reception desk in the Newman Towers lobby, a shadow of the person she used to be. "You were aware," he said. "You took advantage of me." She laughed haltingly. "No, Kane. I cherished you. I made that error. I thought you were capable of changing. I was the idiot." She spoke with sadness rather than rage. It was more devastating to Kane than Victor's financial conflict. The one thing he hadn't budgeted for was Amy's suffering, which now loomed before him like a mirror reflecting all he had lost. A silent sense of contentment settled in Victor's chest as he sat by himself in his office and gazed at the city lights. Not all retaliation was noisy. Bloodshed and explosives weren't necessary. At times, there was silence, the kind that reverberated through broken relationships and vacuous aspirations. Kane's demise was final. Amy taught a timeless lesson. And because Victor never forgot a betrayal, rather than because he was ruthless, his legend had once again expanded. With an inscrutable expression, Victor poured himself a drink as Genoa buzzed below. Another victory. Another reminder that loyalty was crucial in his culture and that it was never acceptable to cross Victor Newman.